Hello, Get Messy. It's Torrie from Fox and Hazel, and I am super pumped to be here today and show you guys this really fun tutorial. I'm going to be showing you guys how to make grungy textures for backgrounds in your art journals. And this is like a really easy way. All of them are super easy, and it's a great way to add some texture. I'm going to be showing you 4 different techniques, as I indicated. And so I'm going to be working in 2 of my art journals here. This one I have pulled out first is a like a junk journal. It's handmade with a hard-covered book cover. Sorry. So the first tool you're going to need, you saw in my hand there, it's a brayer. It's traditionally used in block printing or like lino cut printing to coat your carved stamps and lino cuts and stuff with ink. So this is what it's used for, but we're going to use it in a different way. To get that really cool ink texture, we're just going to use like gesso or acrylic paint on your brayer. So you can see mine's already dirty. And you'll just roll through it a few times. You do not want your brayer like completely covered. You want it to have some spots and that are dry and things like that, so that when you go to roll it on your paper, you don't get like a big even coat. You want it to be super spotty and not cover evenly. And so as you can see here, we just do a roll, and you get that really textured like ink roller texture. I don't know what else to call it. And you can do this as many times as you want. You totally play around with it, experiment. You can use different colors. You can use different things. You could use ink. I'm just using black gesso because I like gesso. And I like that it's got that really gritty texture to it. And so a really fun way to play with this technique. So here you go. You can see that it's got that texture. I keep saying texture. I'm sorry. I'll try not to say it as often. And so I'm just going back in with another color. This is just vermilion. And so I'm going to apologize up front if my voiceover is a little stilted. I usually do my videos sped up, but this is all real time. I wanted to see you guys to see it as I was doing it, instead of like some videos are sped up and then you can't really quite see what everyone's doing. So I've just grabbed another acrylic paint. One that actually works really good for this is heavy body acrylic, just because it doesn't want to move. It's so thick and it wants to hold onto brush strokes and textures that it makes it really great for doing this rolled brayer technique. I haven't really done it a whole lot with like fluid acrylics or inks or anything. You could totally try it. I would love to see what came out of it if you did. My only hesitation would be that they were too fluid, because even with traditional block printing or lino cuts, the ink they use is actually quite thick. It's not thin and runny like you would think of with ink. It's actually quite thick. So yeah, that's our first technique. So as you can see, you could totally go crazy with this, add like a bunch of different colors, just do a few, get wild with it if you want. And the beauty of it is this actually rolls on pretty thin, so it dries quick. So you can continue on with your art journaling lickety split. So we're moving on to the second technique, and this art journal I'm working in is just like a knockoff like traveler's notebook insert. It's sketch paper, kind of like heavier sketch paper. So apparently it's falling apart. And so for this technique, I'm trying to remember what I'm going to do next. I think, I'm going to lay down a layer of gesso because this sketch paper is not very thick or heavy. It doesn't really hold up to wet medium very well. I apologize. That was my phone that just went off. It doesn't really hold up to wet mediums very well. So when I use art journals like this, what I do is I try to put a coat of gesso on it to seal the page so that it won't seep through to the other side. If it's like obviously copy paper would be terrible. This is thick, like almost like a cardstock, I guess. So you could totally do this on cardstock. I've worked on loose cardstock all the time like this. Obviously, if you're a fairly avid art journaler, this isn't any new information, but if you're new, this is a trick I use all the time, is coating all my paper in gesso first. It's just like a really good base, and it's what it's used for. Gesso is actually an acrylic primer that artists use on all kinds of surfaces to prep it for painting, so it totally makes sense to use it in this way. And I'm just drying it with a heat gun because I'm obsessed with my heat gun and I hate waiting for stuff to dry. So you can totally just do, or if you don't have one, just, let it air dry. So I apologize. I tried to speed this part up for you guys. unfortunately, drying things with a air gun just takes a little bit. So now that your gesso is dry, what I have here is a water bottle, like a spray bottle with water in it, and I'm just lightly misting the surface of the page first, and then I'm going to grab acrylic inks and a big piece, or like a fairly good sized piece of plastic cling wrap, like you would wrap leftover food in, is what you're going to be using here. You could try this with water soluble mediums. I just find it works better with acrylic inks just because it dries and then it's permanent. So I'm just using 2 of my favorite colors here. You could use whatever you want. And you'll drop a couple of drops or a few drops of each color you want onto your surface. And then you'll grab your cling wrap. But before you do that, you're going to grab your spray bottle and just, oh no, I'm using a paintbrush, sorry. You're just going to get quite a bit of water in your paintbrush and move that ink around, or paint, or whatever I've used, around your page. You want it to be quite wet, and you want it to be, or to have a fair amount of water on it. You don't want this to be too dry, because what you're going to do is take this cling wrap, which I've dunked in my paint, and you're going to sort of lay it out and sort of crunch it up and then lay it down on your page here. If you are a person who's done watercolor, this might be a familiar technique that you can do with tissue paper too. But I found a way that I really like it with acrylics, and using plastic wrap seemed to make sense for me. And then this is another one. You can use your heat gun, or you can let it air dry. It will take quite a bit longer to air dry, just because if you've sealed that paper, it's not going to have as much ability to breathe and let the air in, so to speak. So I ran into no problems with it drying with an air gun. I actually really liked the texture that came out. It almost shrink wraps your page a bit. You can see that plastic melting a bit when I use it with the heat gun. And I liked it. It gave it quite a good texture. If you do use a heat gun, you can see me flipping it over, and I recommend that you do this because you're getting it to the backside where the plastic isn't sealing off the page from the airflow, if you will. So once you've got it as dry as you like, whether you've used a heat gun or whether you've air dried it, then you can peel off your plastic wrap, and you've got this really great sort of grungy, almost tie-dye-ish texture. So, and then again, if it's still not dry enough, you can hit it with a heat gun again, or you can just let it air dry. If you take it off too soon, if you're using a surface that is sealed, the paint will just run into each other once you've taken that plastic wrap off. However, if you did this on like a really heavy paper, like a watercolor paper that wasn't sealed, you would be able to take it off sooner because the paper would absorb that ink and that water, and then it wouldn't move. So we are moving on to technique number 3, I believe. And again, this is my handmade journal. Just a bunch of riffraff I stuck in there. Most of these are kind of like watercolor papers, cheap watercolor papers. So these are sprays that I have. I know there's like a million out there in the world. The ones I'm using are from Deco Art and from Shimmers Paints. You could also use like dilution inks if you have those, and like any Heidi Swap, like anything you have. But you will want to cover anything you don't want paint on for this, because you're using sprays. That's why you can see me like not meticulously, but like obsessively wiping stuff up. And so we're going to grab our trusty water bottle sprayer again. And what we're going to do is, again, do another light mist of water first. I find that I do this on a lot of these things where I'm spraying and trying to like get sort of like a watery effect, because this prevents the, ink or whatever from not like instantly absorbing into that paper as soon as it hits it. It has a bit of a barrier from having the water there first. And so it's a little bit easier to move it around, and it's fluid. So I've sprayed this with like a really bright magenta, and I'm going in with this royal purple color. I'm trying to protect my precious white desk here. I did a so-so job at it. And so you'll spray it on there, and then as you can see, it has like a really good like splattery effect. And then again, it's optional. You can let it air dry, but if you have a heat gun that's maybe a bit more like forceful with air, this is one I just got off Amazon, and I find that I had another one, and this one has a lot more like air that moves through it. And so why am I going so fast? Anyways, it kind of pushes the ink around, as you can see, and it kind of leaves these more water stained effects. And so I've dried my first layer, and now I'm going in with a black. It won't dry this dark. And then again, a little bit of water to help it move around the page a bit more. Like I said, you can use this with whatever colors you want, any of these techniques. I find for me that I quite like using like dark colors and blacks. I think that really adds to the kind of grungy effect. Like this wouldn't have quite the same mood if it was done in like yellows and, you know, blues. It would look pretty, but it wouldn't be quite as like grungy. So play around with whatever color combos you want. Again, but if you want sort of like that darker, grungier, moodier kind of feel, then I really encourage you to use black in some sort of form. So yeah, you can see here that's the end result. And so I think what I grab next is some white gesso. That's what it is. We're going to add a bit of paint splatters to this. This is totally optional too. But again, if we're trying to go for that really like grungy, messy, sort of gritty look to it, then this is a great way. And this is not going to be like your cute little like watercolor galaxy kind of paint splattering. So I've got gesso down there. Again, I'm covering all my surfaces because I'm paranoid about wrecking my desk. I also suggest you do this because paint splattering gets really messy really quick. I've got a little bit of water, or quite a bit of water in my paintbrush, and I'm watering down, but you can see I've scooped up like a ton of paint, and now I'm dropping it, sort of flicking and dropping it onto my page, and I'm getting those really big, thick paint splatters. I don't want like a nice little mist. I want like big drips. And so if you have white paint that's like a little bit thinner, you probably don't need to water it down. My gesso is like just regular Liquitex gesso, but I find that it works better if I water it down just a little bit. So yeah, so that's our third grungy background texture. And now we're going to go on to our fourth. And what you're going to need for this fourth texture is one of those air dusters. You'll see it in a second here. It's what you would use to clean out like your keyboard or electronics with. It's compressed gas duster, I guess is this official term. You'll need one of these, and you'll need that red nozzle on it. And then you'll need either acrylic inks or sumi ink. I'm using a sumi ink here. This is just like a Japanese calligraphy ink. And so also too, this works better is the places I'm putting it on this page have a bit of gesso on it. So this does work better on a sealed surface rather than just on plain paper. So what you'll do is grab some sumi ink. I have a little bit of water in my brush and sort of splat it, if you will, onto your page. And there you go. And then what you're going to do is use this air duster to spray the ink across your page. It makes this a really cool effect. I actually found this technique from an artist like years ago online. He did these things called his Daily Monsters, where he was actually an illustrator. And so he would just do one ink blob, spray it, and then he would, look at it and then use an illustration pen or whatever to draw it into a monster. And so I'll link it in the post for you guys to check about. I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but super cool stuff. And so I learned this technique from seeing his work, some little 30-second or 60-second video. And so yeah, you can keep repeating this. If looks like your page freezes, don't fret. It will unthaw and then it will still be wet. So you can see here, it was frozen and unthawed, and then now I'm drying it. So that's the other thing too, is when you use the compressed gas, I believe it's nitrogen in it. So it will immediately sort of freeze whatever liquid is on your page, but it won't dry it. It's just going to freeze. And once it thaws out, it will be wet again and will have to actually dry. So just be mindful of that you don't, stick your hand in it or go to draw on top of it and it's wet still. So yeah, you get these really cool spidery kind of, oh, I almost knocked my water over. You get these really cool spidery effects. And again, you can do this just once. You could do this, and I'm going to do it with acrylic ink here to show you how it works with that. Again, you could try this with different mediums. I haven't used a lot of other mediums with it just because you want something that's very liquid and fluid. And so you could try this with watercolors if you wanted and see what happened. You could try it with other colored inks. Or even dilution sprays. You could totally try it with that too. So yeah, so you just keep playing around. I just love these little spidery effects it gives, like these little webby bits. Sorry, that's my shoulder as I try to clean up my desk before anything stains. So yes, this is our fourth technique. It's really cool. I think it adds texture. And I totally forgot, I actually had 5 techniques I wanted to show you guys. This one is for all the jelly plate peeps out in the world. If you have a jelly plate, you know what this is. If you don't have one, basically what it is, it's like a gelatin plate is the best way I can describe it. You can see it, it's like squishy, and it's for printmaking. I'm just using a little, like a little card size one. I don't know exactly how big it is. It's like the smaller size one. It's like an index card size, roughly. You could totally do this if you have like a big one that would do your whole page at once. You could totally do this too. But I find this little one's kind of fun to use because you can use it on different sizes of pages, if you will. And so there you go. I've used the leftover to make another background as I gestured. So I'm just coating my jelly plate with some sort of like aqua, and then I decided at the last second there to add some sumi ink to it and roll it. Things that are actually really like water-based or like liquid will sort of repel from this jelly plate, and I'm gonna hold it up and you can see it actually adds a really cool texture to it. So if you are a jelly plate user or new to them, I would totally encourage you to experiment with other things besides just acrylic paint, because some of it makes like a really cool texture. I did some a while ago with watercolor paints, and I made like the coolest stuff because it all kind of beads and stuff. So anyways, so yeah, you can see I've just put it on my page and rolled it. And you still get that printing texture that you would get from jelly plates, but instead of having to try and do it on your jelly plate, which like with a journal, this little one is great because you can just do it directly on the page. And I know there's some people who are like, oh, I only do jelly plates if the jelly plate's flat and I can put my paper on top of it, et cetera, et cetera. But like, I'm all about making your own rules and going rogue and doing whatever the heck you want with your supplies. So I totally think you should just do whatever works for you. And in this case, I think it worked out really good, that you get this really fun printed jelly plate texture on your page. And you can repeat it. You could totally do this in like different colors if you wanted to. You could layer it on top of one another. It's basically like getting a jelly print texture, but like directly in your journal versus having to make it on paper or on deli paper and then pasting it into your journal. And I'm just using the leftover, I think, from what was left on my brayer here just to fill in some of the gaps on that one. Yeah. So yeah, that's that technique. It's super easy, and you could play with the colors, you could play with the marks you make on it, everything. We're just trying to get that really gritty, like dry texture almost, where it's kind of transferring the colors, but not totally. So yeah, these are the 5 techniques to create some grungy backgrounds in your art journal. The first one we saw there was the brayer technique, where you're going to use acrylic paint with your brayer. The next ones here are the sprays with the paint splatter, the jelly plate technique. We've got our saran wrap technique with inks, and then our compressed air duster. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, you guys. I'm just going to show you guys examples here. These are the finished art journal pages that I created in the video, and then I went on to Art Journal More. And so you can see that these grungy backgrounds can be super versatile. They don't have to be really grungy in the end page. They can just add a lot of texture and color and interest to your back pages. So thanks so much for watching, you guys, and I hope to be back soon. Bye.